Okay everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to show a little bit of a DIY on how I made my monkey poles. Mix it up a little bit, and plus this time of year I think it's quite slow, to be honest with you, so thought I'd try something a little bit different. These are some leftover offcuts from what I made the tops out of. Obviously you can make them any spec you want really, but if you really wanted to know what the sizing was for the timber that I used, so we are 14 centimetres wide on that by 4.5 centimetres on that, so that's the biggest bit of timber that I used, and I used 2 lots of that. And then this piece here we have is, so it's 4.5 wide and 2 centimetres deep. So essentially what we're looking to put together is something very similar to this. This was something I built when I made my first lot of monkey poles, but I didn't really like the gaps in between. I kind of liked it where I've got the two thicker bits of timber and there's not so much of a gap in between it. So I might change them for the future, but we're just showing you kind of what I put together for the top. So the 2 bits of timber here are just holding it all together with a few screws along the bottom. And what I've done is, if you notice, you can't see any of the screws from the top. It makes it look much cleaner. So here I take my tape measure and I measure along the timber to the desired length that I want for the overall of the top of the monkey pole, and I mark it with a pencil. And then what I do is I take a set square, and where that line is I just draw a line all the way across the timber. That way I've got a nice straight edge to cut to when I take it to the saw. Then, because I need 2 pieces, I just repeat the process on the same piece of wood. That way I've got 2 pieces the same length, and that'll be the amount that I need for my top. So after we're all measured up, we then get our saw and we cut the wood wherever we need. You can do this with a handsaw. As I found out with this, the blade wasn't quite big enough, so I had to take a couple of cuts to it just to manage to get to cut right the way through. Then I measured the width between the 2 pieces of timber so that I knew the piece of timber that I'm using to join them needed to be the same length. Then I took my set square again and drew a nice straight line just so I could stick to that while I use the saw. Just add, while you're using any type of power tool, make sure you use goggles, and please mind your fingers as well, because that will take your fingers off. So now the fun part, everything starts coming together. What I do is I take the timber that I cut to attach the 2 other pieces, and I put 4 screws in just to make it nice and strong. Take my post, and I've got 2 other pieces of timber that I've cut, and I mark halfway between the timber and halfway point between the width of the post, and I put a screw in. This is going to be the part where we attach the top to. Then I turn the post over and I just repeat the process. Now I take the top that I'd already built and the post, and what I do is I measure halfway between the timber that's on the top and then halfway again in between the post. That way we know that it lines up perfectly. Once everything's measured up and lined up, I just screw it all together, make sure they're nice and tight and it's nice and sturdy. Then I just used some plastic sheeting that you'd use for decorating, laid that out on the floor and stained the whole thing. You can use whatever colour you want. I just had this laying around from before, so that's what I used. Once the stain had dried, I went into the garden, found the spot that I wanted to put it in, dug a hole and just checked the height every so often just as I was digging. Take a spirit level and make sure on both sides of the post that you check that it's level. You see, I just chuck a little bit of mud in there just to keep it in place, and then what I do is I get some postcrete and I'm going to put that around the bottom and then let that set. So you can kind of build these poles any way you want, really. I quite like how my new one turned out. I think they're quite sturdy. I possibly would be swapping all of my old ones into this style, but I'm going to let them wear out first before I go spending any more money. If you did like the video, could you just hit the like button? That'd be great. And if you haven't subscribed already, if you could subscribe, that would be awesome. Thanks to everyone that's already following me. Couldn't do this without you. And I'll catch you again next week. Take care.